Taking its time.
You're blocking
Oh,
it.
we're live. We are live now. Took its time there. But hello, guys. We are back again for another Cashflow Digital with Brad, Mike, and this week, Mr. Chris Palmer has woken up from his hangover and decided to go on. And we're going to be talking about entities. What else did we promise to talk about, Mike?
So I think Search Engine Roundtable was mentioned this, but the knowledge graph in local is popping links. It's popping it in some national markets as well. So start looking at your knowledge graph results in your local campaigns, especially. That's just a tip of today, I guess we'll call it. Go ahead, Chris.
I saw that they dabbled something they were releasing it to India. I wonder why they launched it there instead of in the U.S. market. I'm just curious about that.
I saw it in San Diego. So San Diego's always been a beta location for them. So I always check over there. And they've been popping around with it for a little bit now. But it is interesting, though. It doesn't make sense that they would roll it there and not here in the U.S. first, but because it's not typically their style.
But however, you have to find out. I wonder if they were trying to weed out the real from the non-authentic accounts, because you have to really go through a process to get into it. Because I was like, hey, how do I do this? Yeah. But yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. They always make freaking things annoying is all it comes down to, in my opinion. But it's like before it was the 2019, the first core update, or broad core, I think it was. They've been rolling it out. I think Cam and I have been watching these updates for like 2 years in our markets. And then they rolled it out and hit everybody in the market. But for 2 freaking years before they rolled out the update, they would just completely rescore a search. So everything would drop out for 2 hours. So you freaking gone, and then it would come back in a couple hours, 3 hours later with completely new rescoring without any changes to the website. So I guess that's another little tip. If you see that happen, I get a lot of messages from people panicking. My site's gone. It's nowhere to be seen. Just always wait and give it some time.
Don't freak
just
out,
like
Chicken Little.
Yeah, exactly. The sky isn't falling. Even if you lose your website, you can always build another one, dude.
That's a gem right there. Just wait.
Yeah. Oh, I think it was in a market in THC, kind of an off market, but there was they hit everyone really hard, and a buddy of mine they tanked this fucking site from like 150 to down to like 5,000 a month, right? And it was hard, and I kept telling him, go drink a fucking beer and get on the boat and just chill and some Bob Marley and shit. And he did. It's a hard week or two when you're freaking looking at a decrease, that kind of shit, and it fucking reminds me of like 2007 when I woke up and I had lost like 5 or 6 revenue streams, and that's the eat a bullet morning is what I call that, because I woke up and I was making no fucking money after going to bed making fucking great. Yeah, it just was like, oh shit. But you just have to. It took my wife probably like 2 years. I would say actually it probably took her 10 fucking years to even begin to trust that income would come back when it dropped. But it's a fucking roller coaster when you live it and you're keep and stick in this industry solo or with a lean company and not go major client stuff. It'll come and go real freaking fast. It's fast money. So
yeah,
I think every SEO every digital marketer has to become some sort of investor or have some other fucking skill to offset the fastness of the money on the internet, right? But enough.
You got to be able to shovel it somewhere when it's coming in too.
Exactly.
That's what I struggle with. It's like, what do I do with this? The market's scaring the crap out of me right now. It's back up to
dude. I cashed out. I was lucky enough. We were doing a project with somebody that I met in Anaheim last year, and he was investing a lot. And it was before the virus hit the whole world. Got into the biotech stuff before that, just listening to someone else, dude, like listening to advice, and was able to cash out, do well in the market with that. But the point of that is like last week we were talking about work with people. but also open your damn mind and listen, because you never know who's going to teach you something. Just because you might know more about fucking link building than them, they might fucking make you a ton of money in the market or whatever, or bring you a campaign that you don't know anything about, you know? So it's really important to listen to what people have to say. And on that note, last week we were talking about jumping into entities and things like that. So I guess we'll start with, how's everyone doing this week? And do you have any questions that are just sparking up before we get into the entity talk? Because the entity talk is important before you go out there and do any link building, right? It's extremely important, and it can be everything you do in some cases.
It can be all you do, you know?
Yeah.
Solid on page. Yeah.
Absolutely. So basically, so Chris, do you, like, when we say entities, we just talk about we're talking about the social circle. I don't do a lot of schema except for the stuff that's automated. I consider like everything that has to do with establishing a brand, establishing I'm going to say entity, because that's just what I call it, is kind of how I look at it. So do you have a process that you use on the beginning of a campaign?
I think that everything ties into an entity, but the process would be, I'm sure, along the same lines as yours, as far as, you know, socials, press releases, citations, depending on the niche. I think that it's just how you said, entity is really, it's all works together.
Yeah.
So that's, you know,
and it's a good way to look at it. I've explained it to some people, for people that are new out there. If you look at what the requirements are to get into Wikipedia, right? Pretend like you're trying to get a wiki page, and go build everything you need to build to get a damn wiki page legitimately, and you're establishing your entity, because they only like to publish established entities. So when you look at their requirements, it's your cheat sheet for how do I establish an entity. And they're going to look for news, like Chris said about press. They're going to look for pages that are talking about your site, sites about your site. They're going to look at your social media profile. The editors will, if they care about their market. It's like, essentially, you're going to treat, it's like we always say, treat every freaking thing that you put up like a business. So whether you're doing lead gen, you're doing client work, you're doing affiliate work, we are always going to treat it like it's somebody's business, or my own business, my mom's business, right? So, because when you start to treat it like that, you do everything that you need to do, and you protect your bases. I advertise, I pay for advertising for my businesses, right? I build the social media presence, and I market the social media presence. I do press when there's press to be done. So all of that establishes that entity right there. So we have a spreadsheet that we use, and that just goes out, and that's what gets built every single time. Whether it's somebody off Fiverr, somebody that's hired in a campaign, somebody.
You can build an entity for cheap. Mike mentioned Fiverr. You can get it done for cheap if you need it quick, fast, in a hurry. So, and all the stuff he's talking about is perfect for anytime you get a reputation management company. People just want to blast their LinkedIn profile, blast their Facebook profile, but this entity establishment, the way that Mike was just outlining, is how you should start every one of those if you want to actually do good for the company that you're working for.
I fell into a trap though, right? So here's a funny quick story. So I wanted the Wikipedia page. I've wanted it for the last few years. So I went on to Upwork in my own name and said, someone make me a Wikipedia page. So people kept saying, you're not noteworthy enough, you don't have enough press, blah, 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 blah. So I worked on that for a few years, finally found a guy who said, I can get you a page, no problem at all. And he built the page, and when it was coming to going live, when it goes to those Wikipedia guys in the background who are checking shit out, they said to the guy who was making my profile, is this commercial based, or is this guy really deserving of a Wikipedia profile? They went, no, I can vouch for him, I know him, it's not commercial based, blah, 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 blah. So just as it was about to go live, they pulled the plug on it, they put up the Upwork ad that I had and said, this guy a few years ago has asked for a Wikipedia page, so I'm fucked.
So this is a really fucking good point, because it's happened to friends of mine too. Not that you're not my friend, but you live in a different country, so you don't fucking count. No, but anyways, no. Hey, so there's Wiki Editors was a good site. I don't know if they're around anymore. There's people that are established that do this on the down low. So you definitely do not want to publish that you're trying to push into this, because it's supposed to be editorial, right? It's not supposed to be paid for. It's supposed to just happen. Just like good SEO just fucking happens for Google. You just get your traffic, make your money, you're done, right? So yeah, you're not supposed to pay for it. You're not supposed to do anything like that. But what it comes down to, it's just like an entity. You need the press, you need the establishment. You need to start building that. So if you have a plan to do that, if you want to do it legitimately or have a head, like a one up when you go hire someone to do it for you, then just start dropping that stuff. I mean, drop press on solid lists, you know, and just, you can drop it even in stuff like Quantum and all this stuff that's made for SEOs, because it starts to establish and get it out there, because they have to have sites, they have to have stuff what they can go and say, okay, this is a reference for this and this and this and this. And it sucks for Craig, because realistically, dude, you should have one, because you do this fucking for no reason, right? You're not no reason. You're helping people, but you do this and you're not getting compensated for this. I'm not getting compensated for this. So there's no reason they shouldn't be publishing your Wikipedia page. And then, so it's jacked up. So take that from Clint and make sure, I do need the money, Clint, you're right. So take that from Craig and make sure that you kind of protect what you're trying to do, and don't talk to everybody in the world about everything. It's a good lesson for all SEO. Don't talk to everybody in the world about, like, if you're doing something shady, maybe keep it to yourself, right? Just don't advertise the fact that you're doing something shady.
Yeah, if you're hacking AdSense, don't post it on anywhere. Yeah.
Have you been successful with getting Wiki, as you know, we're talking about entity establishment? Have you been successful with that, with anything that was commercial based?
Commercial based, yeah, but it's taken a long time to get, like, let me even just take a look at his site real quick and see if it's even still there before.
I try not to ever go that far, or hopefully
they had to have some type of prestige, though. You have to be able to point to something that was done that's public. Yes. I mean, that's
it depends on categories as well, but yes, it has to be, like, if you're doing this legitimately, it does. But the sites I'm talking about have worked with people like Range Rover, you know, major brands and things. So this is the type of site that I've had success with. I don't really do it for my link building at all. I'm looking right now, and there's a lot of references to the site that I'm talking about, actually.
Yeah, I worked with Sam Ovens for a while for ORM. And someone went in and deleted his wiki page.
That was until Neil took it from us.
Yeah, that was a different project too. I was working with him before that. And,
I know that.
Yeah, we were kicking ass for him. He wanted me to push a bunch of Lopez videos that he had up and crap. And someone just wiped out his wiki because he didn't have enough references. So if you're going to go and do that, like Craig said, you got to spend some time building it. So they went out and spent an ass ton on, like, the mental masturbation type guest posts, you know, Forbes and all of that type of stuff to build that up. So if you're going to do any kind of ORM or anything like that, it's good to have that in place if you want to Wikipedia.
So one thing that, like, for Wikipedia, you have to think about it. If you're going to do something with a site that's not as notorious or well-known as other sites, you have to think about it like this. Can I get into Wikipedia by referencing someone who's already in Wikipedia? So I've got hundreds and hundreds of mentions for websites in Wikipedia, but I don't have my own pages. However, I am cited on pages talking about people like Paris Hilton, for example. So if you can get enough exposure to get a good quote in there and be a citation for someone, when people are coming in to do research, this all leads back to, like, white hat link building, right? This is exposure, this is brand building. So you can get all over these things by just referencing other things instead of going directly and trying to get your own page. You can be all over, have more exposure by referencing popular culture or other topics that are related to your market that people are looking at and using Wikipedia for. I think the site I just looked at there looks like there's like 525 references to this website throughout the citations in Wikipedia. So there's definitely a presence, but not a page.
That sucks ass. That sucks ass. You should also have a page.
I should.
He's got a page. Have you ever looked up Sasquatch? He comes up. He's got the knowledge panel and everything, you know?
It's true. It's true. It's very true. And now they have links in it. Mm-hmm. So back to Entity. Entity, to me, really, like, the ultimate end-all, be-all for me, if I'm going to put up a site. There's someone said that 80% of the people don't care what you're up to. The other 20% will stab you in the back. It's true. But whatever. No, we don't need to care if anyone cares what we're up to. We're just here shooting the shit with everybody and working and trying to feed our families, right, G? Entity, to me, the end all be all is having a map listing in Google, because that's where the revenue comes from. So when we build our campaigns, when we build our networks for lead generation, those are going to be focused around the property in Google.
Luckily, that's relatively easy compared to Wikipedia.
It's way easier than Wikipedia, actually. That's kind of funny, isn't it? That one actually makes you money, and the Wikipedia one does not.
And you're building out those properties. What's the primary traffic generator? Paid, yes?
Maps itself. So always doing paid if it calls for it. Paid is not just paid advertising for conversion. It's SEO. It's going to drive. I mean, this is why at the beginning I was talking about, we were mentioning on page. It's all on page, right? Because even your link building is on page. You're optimizing your backlink page to be a well-optimized page talking about your page that is well-optimized. So if you're building your own links and you control your own links, well, you're optimizing that. You should also be optimizing that for revenue, AKA you could be driving traffic to the backlink page, building revenue, converting there, but also you're enhancing that backlink by driving traffic to that backlink. So that backlink is going to be more authoritative in Google's eyes. It's going to rank you better than it would if you didn't have traffic on that backlink, right? This is why edits and things that are already indexed, if you have a network going in and just building new pages on that, is a much better way to do it than going and just finding a fucking random site in the market and building it, right? So if you start to look at
results a lot quicker with edits.
100% quicker, and you need a lot less, and you can let the natural aspect take in, like we were talking about last week. So I guess Matt Diggity has a Wikipedia page, is what somebody said.
I don't even think he does, to be honest. But he will now. He'll go out and fucking get one.
Because you don't have one, right?
There you go.
Not many people have them.
Let's see. I'm interested now. Now I'm in freaking Wikipedia mode. It's like back in the day when just using the images and building wiki images and links through wiki images. That's the cool thing about wiki when you really get down into that. It's a good, the wiki sites are good sites to study for internal structure, but also look at the internal linking they're doing and make sure you don't do what Wikipedia is doing, because you're not fucking Wikipedia and you're going to over optimize the shit out of yourself, right? So Wikipedia
comes up by Blackstreet, but I don't think that's not him.
No, I don't see anything in there.
So, Mike, when you're building out that entity, establishing it to rank in maps, you're focusing on the site and the optimization for the maps, but the traffic that's coming in. So how many, when you're moving into a location, how many properties are you building out generally?
So I would say the last
depends on the location, really.
Yeah, it's going to depend on location. The last major build was probably around 3,000 sites.
So that's more than one location.
And what's the burn before you start recouping upfront costs?
Well, that was a few $100,000 easy build out. I mean, it's not a cheap build out at all, but
on a singular basis. So I have seen, actually last week I was on a project I'm working on with a guy. We got a map, we got a call, and we had fully recouped our investment within less than 12 hours, I think. So,
that happens like that. Was that the same one you were talking about a few weeks ago, or a different one? Because like it happens, like if you get a map listing up.
No, it's a different one. Yeah, but that one's paying itself off. Yeah, it
will end up paying for itself on a lower scale, like really quickly. Now, the market I'm talking about is a market where there's like the deals are large, and I think the budget on that campaign was like 60,000 a month to 70,000 a month was the spend on that campaign or something like that. So
that includes staffing and everything.
Yeah, that's just the campaign budget, right? So, but if you're coming in, it's like, I mean, what Brad was saying, if you come in and you say you can buy a map listing and you're spending too much, you're spending $200 on a map listing, but you're also making $50 calls. And so you spend $200 on the build and you get like 10 maps up or 5 maps up, and you're getting $50 calls, and you get a call in the first month from like half of them. You're paying with it within the second month, without a problem if you do it.
It's all about cash flow for me. I sat down on a specific campaign over the weekend. I determined how much on average each map brings in. And on average per month, each map in this particular campaign brought in $35. You know, some of them didn't get any calls. Some of them got, you know, a bunch of calls. So, but I don't watch it because I shotgun it and just spray and pray. But on average, each one got $35. So if I can sit there and I can get 10 accounts, I just set up $350 a month cash flow for me. And then I do it again, then I do it again, then I do it again, then I do it again. And I'm like an OCD, you know, Energizer bunny. And I'm just trying to get as many as I can and set up as much cash flow while you can. So it'll just keep going once you can't.
Well, and you're targeting maps. So you're doing mass amounts of pages. So you're not running any paid? Zero?
Not to those, no.
None of your
not to any of the campaigns that I just mentioned. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, as in general, though, is it
paid should be ran where you need paid? Here's the deal: we all know traffic freaking makes shit rank, right? It should be ran for multiple reasons. Yeah. It should be ran for conversion. It should be ran for your SEO as well. So not only is it marketing, but it's all marketing, but it also is for your ranking as well. So but with the map stuff, I think the difference is, and why it sounds like we're not, is because when we do maps, we are literally focusing. That is the best revenue that you can get. The map revenue converts better than anything in any campaign I've ever been in. It also pulls traffic faster than anything I've ever seen. Even like paid, the difference is the paid, you need the budget. The map, you get it up and you're pulling traffic within
the only thing that would have rivaled it, in my opinion, was mass sites 3 or 4 years ago, because you could get like 10,000 pages indexed overnight. Now that just doesn't happen, and you could keep them indexed for a while. So you would just, as you sit there, and I'm like the OCD Energizer bunny again, back in the day with traffic sites. Like Mike would wake up in his email,
like 250 websites in the morning
of doing a joint venture, me and him. And he had his email in the account for the mass page builder that we were doing. So like every site would ping his email. So he'd wake up and have to like spend, you know, half hour to an hour clearing out his email every morning, because I would.
And then we forgot to put on turn off auto renew on one of the fucking builds, dude. Yeah. And the next year, man, that fucking hurt when that auto renew. So there's like a question. What are some of the mistakes you guys made that we should avoid as newbies? Turn off auto renew.
Always, you know you want it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I've probably lost damn near, I would say 20 to 30,000 in the last couple years, just not fucking turning off auto renew. I'd say maybe more than a couple years, but it's been enough money to make it like, dude, that was a fucking dumb mistake I just made.
Well,
you know?
The problem with mass page is the dot onlines were indexing better than, like, way better than any others. But they cost what, a couple bucks, $2, I think, at the time. Then the renew was like $30, 20 or $30. So you get hit with that hundreds of sites. You know, it adds up quick.
And that's one thing, you know, that reminds me, a little tip for people that are new. If you're building networks, if you're building like microsites or PBNs, whatever you want to call them, remember that when you register a domain, there is a time period that domain, that protection and privacy drops and everyone can see it. Meaning, like, Google always can see who's registering shit, right? There you go. That's funny. So there's always a point, and Google's a registrar, so there's a point when you're registering this stuff where they're going to be able to see it. So don't get too freaked out about, oh my God, my freaking network, and I need to do this, like blah, 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 blah. You can get away with certain things. Like, it used to be where you could easily get away with, like, LA Plumber 1, LA Plumber 2, LA Plumber 3, LA Plumber 4,
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, go all the way through, and then go.
So that's how we build, right?
Yeah.
And they started flagging based on that. Now, these are lots of manuals. We're talking about more of a manual process of getting your sites de-indexed than a flag in the index or in the crawl. But if you do these patterns that they didn't used to like look for a lot, like they are a trigger now. So if you are doing mass page, I want to make it clear we're not saying don't do mass page, but for us, it just is not the best revenue. There's better revenue in maps, right? So
you're better off to get an expired domain, throw a GMB on it, and then build out your mass page with that. In my opinion, a smaller build, yeah. And then it already has the entity a lot of times. If you get an expired domain, since we're talking about entities, get a domain that already has an entity, then all the work is done for you. And then you just spend $10 on it. You can quickly, if they have any social accounts set up, even if you don't have access to them, tie it into the schema with the same as, just to solidify yourself a little bit more. Tie in some wiki data, crap like that, in relation to your niche, and then you've got an entity set up and you're making money hopefully with that site, and you're pushing your primary money site as well. So
no, I think for me the expired domain option is definitely the best option, because doing that shit from scratch is just a fucking pain in the ass. Fuck that shit.
It is.
That it is. And the expensive I remember I used to sit there and like set alarms and all that shit for the auction domains because they were better. And then I would miss it, or I'd wait and then I'm not paying that, and then miss out on it. But once I really got into expired domains, I was like, it's done. I'm never going back.
I remember when I met Jimmy Kelly, I was at Sue Bell's house with Russell Wright or whatever, and I had some auctions going on. This is like 2014 or something like that. And that was the last time I ever did it, because I totally forgot about him because I got way too fucking drunk and I missed everything. And I was just like, fuck this, dude. This is too much work, dude. It always expired. That was bitching, because back then you could take Cloudflare and you could spoof the IP of any website. So you just register a domain and you just switch the IP in Cloudflare, and instantly you would actually rebuild the whole site without doing anything on the server. And you'd have that counted as internal links in Google. So you'd rank yourself by just fucking reverse IPing and shit your domain. So you would be building links based on just kind of fucking with Cloudflare. And it worked extremely well, but they closed it probably 2016, 17, something like that.
Back in 2013, I was just buying PR domains, setting them up, didn't matter the niche, pointing them over, throwing like a few spin rewriter articles on them, and you would have instant rankings for the most part. Both of them would get indexed right away. You rank an EMD like overnight, and you just flip it or turn it into revenue.
So basically, though, with the entity, the question about new people and what mistakes not to make, really, I think that you need to focus on the money side of everything. Like, the ranking is cool and all that, but just do the minimum that you have to do to get the ranks that you need and the traffic that you need for the revenue. So when we say an entity, sometimes for us, that's just a fucking map listing. There's nothing else involved, not even a website. So if you can get away with just putting up a map listing, get away with just putting up a map listing, right? I
do it in stages. I'll do just the map, maybe throw an expired domain in it at most, and then go back and I'll throw up a lander and I'll optimize it for that. And then if it's still not pushed, I'll go in and I'll add, all the schema to it, just to kind of tie it all together. And if that doesn't do it, then I'll maybe do some linking to the CID and stuff like that. And then after that, then I've really got to focus on it, because it's probably based in a larger city.
Yeah, it's the same thing though. Like, if you put it in a content perspective, why would we write 1,000 words if every one of the competitions get 300 words? We don't need to fucking do that. So same thing with entities, isn't it? You just do what you have to do, and pretty much most of the time you will be able to probably use 2 of the 5 things that you probably will always do. 2 of the easiest things to basically capture that traffic.
On the high end, I don't think we ever spend more than $17 building a fucking entity, right? So that's the high end of things, and that should be the high end of stuff because if you do that, you have like 10, 15 pages. Now, if you have a presence on those, you're getting traffic to those, that's going to start pulling your shit up anyways. You're going to start ranking with that shit right there, and then you can do more. So there's a question from Michael at 10:16. Can you bring that one up, Craig?
Yes, give me a second.
Times are going to be off, I think, for you, right?
Oh yeah, I'm in freaking yeah. There we go. So Yeah, this is a good question right here. I really like this because I'm going to say all of it. I would honestly build your presence. The thing about third parties like Amazon and eBay, you don't control what they do. So this is something that I would say, like what Brad just said, in stages. Start in stages with something like this for sure. I personally would start with building something that I can control, and I would start building a list as soon as possible.
You at least need a site, because if someone sees you on Amazon, so say you start with Amazon, you get your products, you get all those, you get them up, you're selling some stuff. People are going to see your brand and they're going to Google your brand, and you're going to get like instant traffic from that. And you need some type of website there so they can look at it and all that. And then I think your table's missing a leg if you don't continue building out that site at some point.
And the reason I say list is not just for conversion and mailing, but also from the SEO standpoint, because if you are doing your mailing correctly, you will be ranking your pages because of the way you're moving traffic around your pages and your properties. So if you are SEO focused, it is important, if you're new, to also look at it like SEO is just a piece of the puzzle of making money online. It is a good piece. It makes money for free a lot of the times. Well, I say free, but it's cheap, not free. Nothing's free.
Mike's cheap, but he's not free.
I am cheap, but I'm not free. Brad knows he does have to spend on me to keep me happy. So.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So I really would get the site up, be able to capture it. And a good way to do that, I've always used contests whenever I launch e-commerce or published sites. There's always going to be a contest involved, even if it's just a fucking YouTube channel, right? If you are doing, say my daughter does books, right? She does books on YouTube or whatnot. And so she gives away a book, right? If she's writing something and there's a book that's hot, right? And she's going to launch a channel, and this is how I had her launch her channel, is she's going to do that. She's going to write everything, and she's going to give away the book that is hot right then. And that is an instant way to pull people. If you do your research, I'm not going to give away where I put all this stuff, but if you do your research, you can find places where you can put sites or contests where you can drive massive amounts of traffic. It's kind of like when the Dollar Shave Club launched their video, right? Back when they launched, they melted their servers. Well, I can say I physically melted a server with contests. We gave away a free weekend on a private island, and we drove so much fucking traffic that we melted our fucking hardware. And so if you think of SEO from like a marketing standpoint, where your job for SEO is to get as much traffic liking your website and moving around your website and your links as possible, then you're going to be doing SEO correctly. So putting up a site, being able to capture an email, and then hitting Amazon is a great way to start if you need to start with a low budget, right? So start with something like that. Pull the free traffic. Don't worry about if it's all targeted or not. Just take the hit on if some of it doesn't convert, and just get the people in there. There's enough traffic and people that want free shit where you're going to pull people that are on market and on point for your industry, right? So I would start with a page at least and an email capture.
Yeah, makes sense. Chris, you have an eBay store, right? Something to do with your wife?
Yeah, she's an auctioneer, so yes, she does. I mean, a lot of the products, what we did too for some of her stuff and who she works with, was we wanted to get on eBay, Amazon, along with other platforms, so we could take up more room for certain products that we always had in stock. So, I mean, that was just,
Do you build a list?
That's what I did when I was doing e-com, was just push everything to the top. With GSA back in the day.
They were just ranking easier, so it was just like, hey, we'll put these in place. And there was High Bid. There's other platforms, but.
And go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
No. Go. I'm here.
Question. The initial, the question always comes: should I rank my fucking pages in Amazon and Google? And the answer always for me is don't do that until you know that the keywords are converting for you, so you don't tank your freaking listing in Amazon, because that's the more important search engine for you at that point, right? So just be careful with it. It just people make the mistake, and there was a time when it didn't matter, but it has mattered for a long time now. So
I was curious though, because you mentioned, and I'm sorry to ask, but something that was intriguing me is you said, not the last one, but the one before, that you have certain processes that you automate. and it was so much, you do so much of it that it had to be automated. What are those processes that have to be automated that you're always doing? What are those processes?
One example was cloaking hundreds of sites at one time. Yeah. So it's just setting up the same monotonous plugin time and time again, stuff like that. That's like I try and I do it enough to where I know exactly what I want to do when, and like the correct order of operations, at least that I can see. And then I'll sit down and do a spec sheet for our bot guy, and he goes and does it. Then I try it out. If it works, cool, I'll pay him. If not, then he goes and works on it some more, comes back and then does it. But it's like the monotonous, like doom, stuff like that.
Is that how you're utilizing maps? Because that's how maps works. You need to have a lot of them. So is that how you're doing it without having to build out a website for each one?
Certain processes within it, yeah. And it's all optimization too. If I have to go back in and if I can get it with just on-page optimization within the maps, then awesome. We've got campaigns where a lot of them, if we dig down and niche down enough, then there's not that much competition. Of course, in stuff like rehab, you can't really do that as much. You can't put, Denver drug rehab as the biz name. And if you get it in there, it's going to get suspended pretty quickly. So we have to kind of circle back around and do that without doing the biz name. But if you're in a market where you can get the biz name as close to the primary keyword as you can, then it makes it that much easier.
Are you dynamically generating content? Is it like per location?
For the website or for?
Yeah, for sites in general. Is it dynamic?
Yeah, I use short code, so I switch out the short codes and stuff. Yeah, like if I'm building out a bunch of sites, all I care about is switching out the geo. So I'll get a template down, HTML template typically, and then I'll put in the short code, launch the bot, and it goes out and registers, builds, sets it up in Cloudflare, all that stuff, and launches the sites.
How are you keeping it fresh?
Yeah, that's not hard to do. I mean, you don't have to. Yeah. A lot. So when we were doing a lot of mass page, we would keep stuff fresh. Right now, I much prefer to have a site just be built out with software or whatever bots, however you want. We have SaaS, we have bots, but going to build out like 20 to 30 pages and leave it at that, and have a really tight clustered tier 2 site that can generate tight clustered traffic instead of a larger site, because that's just the way I prefer to link and everything. So there's a method that is automated into the content and the quality score algorithm that we use for the content that uses Google to optimize for Google. And that's the best way to optimize, is to let Google tell you what you need to do and how you need to do your internal site structure. So the way that the content is built out and everything's linked together is just taking the direction from Google. If you look at
you're not writing content. You're to keep it fresh. You're pulling. So wait, you consistently are buying new content. You're not pulling it in.
No. It's not. It's auto generated. It's not bought. Yeah. It's auto generated, and there's a lot of good sources that you can use. That there's APIs all over the place. There's a lot of, if you understand like the seed site patents and the link graph and how everything freaking works, then you know where to pull the content from, and that's the content that you want to use. Because so like if you look at a real publisher site, like so when I was working and doing a lot of publishing for people like Range Rover and those types of people, those larger brands, you'll notice there's a reason why we use a lot of mashup, like roundup posts. So there's two types of curation, right? There's external curation and then there's internal curation. So if I want to do a, say I go and I auto-generate 3 posts, now I can take those 3 posts, I can mash up a paragraph from each one and auto-generate another paragraph, and I have another unique article. And then once I have 3 of those, I can do it again. So you can continue to make more new content with the same content that's never going to be duplicate, because duplicate content is not across sites. Duplicate content is internal, and people can argue this all they fucking want, but it just, I can use content from other people and not get in trouble. I know how to do that. Everyone, if they look at it, can figure out how to do that. So you don't have to write content if you don't want to. And when you're doing a large campaign with a lot of sites, you shouldn't be writing a lot of content.
Yeah, plus, if Kyle Roof can rank with Lorem Ipsum, I can rank with some spun stuff.
Yeah. If you guys, one word I'm going to say to you guys, and I want to see your faces, anyone using Mentorprice?
I've been asked that a lot lately.
So if for anyone who doesn't even know what the fuck that means, it pretty much scrapes the content from the kind of search engines and stuff like that and mashes it all together for you. You can fucking embed videos, maps, the full works.
That's what I do.
DuckDuckGo is a good one to scrape from. Yeah.
So basically, I'm assuming that I've never used it, but I'm assuming that they're doing something similar, which is like you look at, I think I mentioned it on the first show, like DuckDuckGo. If you look at DuckDuckGo, there's stuff that's not indexed. It might be crawled, but it's not necessarily indexed. You can pull, and those snippets are going to be trusted by Google because they are ranking in DuckDuckGo. So that's actually a nice seed link, blah, 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 all that shit that comes around with it. But now you have content from, DuckDuckGo, Yahoo. You can grab it from anywhere. Top 5 ranked sites, grab the top 5 ranked sites, a paragraph out of each one and push it in. Now you have the content that's going to work for you, right? So look at what publisher sites do. I had like freaking 10 writers staffed on one site back in like 2005, and we had to constantly find ways to make content. So once you start making content for a real site, or you look at a publisher site, you're going to see that they're going to reuse the content a fucking lot to save money, right?
Doing it for local is cake.
It's cake.
Like you have a kicker paragraph that's the same on every page. You maybe switch out the geo in that paragraph, and then you have other locations we serve, and that's different on every page. And you can go to 5-minute sites and grab that list like that, and then you might have a list of an unordered list that's services. I do that across sites too. I'll just switch out the geo, switch out the phone number, and throw it up on a different GMB. Switch out the geo, switch out the phone number, throw it up on a different GMB.
I think it's Swedish. I think it's Swedish. I forget which exact which language it is, but there's one that is the optimal content to scrape and then translate in Google Translate, and it comes out. I forget what we wrote into the software, but it comes out just really well written. And I believe it's a Scandinavian country. I can't remember exactly which one it is, but when you translate that back into English, it freaking reads really well and it's unique. So if you're taking it from, and Clint mentioned China and translating into English, but as long as you get something that's readable, because I do not like unreadable content. That's one thing I don't do, is I don't do just Markov chain shit. I don't do just fucking trash content because I prefer it to be readable. I had enough instances where manual reviewers are on the sites. I monitor for manual reviewers because you can tell when they're coming by where their referrals are and everything. And those, if the trash content, like I have enough practical experience to see when I have trash content, if I get hit by the manual reviewers, I get fucked more than if I don't have trash content. So I like to have readable content. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I'd like it at a freaking 3rd grade level at least. And so when you translate it from certain languages, play around with Google Translate and translate from certain languages, and you'll get some readable content. And you can use that even if you don't want to go mashup. So if you're doing it by hand, just go freaking grab an article on the topic in another country, translate it in Google and see what you get and see if it's usable for you. It's a very simple, free way to do it without having to program or have anyone program anything. So
you guys have in-house, how are you, for phone calls, do you guys have it in-house, like one central unit taking all calls and then they...
Are you talking about for the campaigns or the agency?
Both.
Agency,
the agency we use call services, and then they can set up appointments.
What about for sending out leads? What are you like 5.9 or Call Fire? Like do you have somebody that's...
Oh yeah, I use CallRail primarily. It's more expensive, but it's easy to set up. You can go SignalWire if you want, but they're a lot cheaper, but you don't get nearly as much functionality. It needs to be so easy a caveman can do it for me to be able to set up complex call flows. So CallRail's good for that.
What are you tracking on the site or when you're generating? What are you tracking primarily?
Generating what?
When you're trying to when you're getting, that's your primary focus is generating leads, right? Mm-hmm. So on the entities, what are you tracking primarily?
Oh, I just use different tracking numbers for the most part.
But also pixeling. I mean, it's also a pixel. So like, if you're
if you want to put a different pixel on each one, you can
control the code on. you're going to pixel what you can pixel, right? So you're going to get them into your remarketing list. Un poquito, Miguel. But basically, if you're going in and you're doing what you can, there's I'm not going to say what the software is because the support's excellent, and if it gets too smashed, it's gonna suck. But there's some very good ways to track absolutely everything about your site. PHP is the answer, basically. PHP is the answer to tracking. So like if that, like, did you say it because I mentioned referrers and things like that? I just went, okay. So basically you can capture anything off of the server that you want. So do you code at all, Chris?
I just just a little Java primarily.
So I'm literally tracking everything. I don't track it to read it later, but the logs are monitored always, so I can go back and look at logs. Because I do a lot of spoofing. I do a lot of traffic manipulation and pushing. I move it places. There's a great subdomain if you really are into cloaking like I am. The Rap Genius was the one that got penalized back in the day. They're now genius.com, and they have an excellent commenting system, annotation system, but they also, I'm not going to say this public. Never mind.
You dirty tease.
Gonna get someone in trouble. I'm not going to fucking do it.
But we've got Ryan Durrani asking, what are your best tips for entity on page? I've been using a database of words from Princeton to stuff words in, which helped. Interested in your tips.
Do you want to tell them the tools we use, Mike, or
what are your best tips? I'm going to read that again. Hold on. What are your best tips? I was thinking about what I almost just said. Sorry.
Why aren't you basing your page off of what's already ranking?
Yeah, you need to find tools that do that for sure.
Surfer.
POP, Page Optimizer Pro is decent for like the structural forming of it, and Cognitive for finding the LSIs, the statistically improbable phrases.
I like Cognitive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Cognitive. I'm telling you, like the thing is, I like POP, I like Core. Cognitive does it in the NLP. Here's what I'm going to say: the NLP API from Google is subpar to what Cognitive can do. There's no fucking question. It is subpar. You're not going to get the same return that you get from Cognitive. Cognitive took a lot of time and years to do this, and
it's easy to use.
There's a guy in Canada that used to contract for the government in the USA that did some consulting with Google, and he has the best fucking database I have ever seen. I don't know if they're connected, but there's a lot of similarities. Cognitive SEO's Keyword Assistant or Content Assistant is hands down the best thing that I've used. Yeah. I've used shit that's way more expensive than that, but it's still not quite where Cognitive is.
That's what I use to build my bullet point list. If I need to incorporate schema, anything.
Everything.
Yeah, that's what I put in.
It does everything, and it's quick.
For LSI and co-occurring words, the database is what really matters, 100%.
Yep.
For building out clusters, everything. Yeah.
And it's one thing to know that, like, you can pull out the related entities. However, if you really want to get the freaking related terms, man, if we're going to talk about, so we'll shift from establishing an entity for the site to actually like entities really quickly. And so if I say, I'm just going to run through this really quick for people that don't understand it. If I say theater, let's go to the theater. You don't know what I'm talking about. Am I taking you to a play, or am I taking you to see Back to the Future in the movie theater, right? But if I say, hey, you want to see some Shakespeare at the theater, now you understand where I'm taking you. I'm taking you to the play, not the movie theater. And this is what your pages have to do. This is how you go from ranking for 10 keywords to a few hundred keywords or more, right? It's by writing this correctly. And if you understand how that works and you can lexiconical stuff your pages and your schema, Clint went over some stuff last week, and I want to get him on here at some point. But it is a good point. If you use a database that is super solid like Cognitive or something private, because there's private stuff out there that works really well, you can cut down, like, I would say 40% of your work, because you have a list for your anchors, you have a list for your content, you have a list for your schema, you have a list for your on-page optimization, you have a list for everything. You can use the same freaking list. We showed people that are kind of studying under us how I sell $30,000 content maps, and literally I showed them how we generated it in like 30 seconds. And once it's mapped out after you take a day to do it, you made 30 fucking grand if you got the right person to buy it, right?
And you just hand it over to their staff and they take care of everything.
Yeah, it's based on who you freaking have selling for you, because I'm not that kind of salesperson, but those types of products can make a lot of money. But they also, if you're just doing PPL or affiliate, they make your life a hell of a lot easier to be looking at it. So we're always doing content maps. We're always doing link maps because it makes everything cheaper and easier.
Plus, then you only have to do it once, and then you can wash and repeat. Switch out the geo.
And it's other sites as well, because now every freaking element that you did is now a freaking EMD that you can buy, right? So if you have like freaking 200 freaking phrases, now it's your content on page. It's your you just separate it. The keyword magic tool from SEMrush, SEMrush, is sick as shit, dude. It's the same kind of deal where you can instantly cluster everything into like groups of 5-page clusters and fucking kill it, right?
Yeah. And so that pretty much answers the question at 1235, Craig. If you want to bring that up, Mr. Leopas. Sorry, I can't pronounce it. Yeah. That's what I would suggest is you need to set up keyword clusters around each of those keywords that are stuck and link to everything. And that should push it. And not only will you rank for the keywords that you're pushing for, you'll rank for a bunch of other keywords that you didn't even know you wanted, but will be extremely helpful. So that would be my one and only suggestion.
I would start looking at the on page. Also look at your metrics, of course. But the on page is going to freaking, if you add in the right stuff, it will suck it up to the top really quickly.
Yeah, as long as structurally and from a coding base, you're solid. As long as there's no structural issues, you don't want to build on a cracked foundation. So we're assuming
you can
that, right?
There are structural issues.
Michael was also asking, should your e-commerce stores be micro niche or more broad? I feel like a micro niche might be too specific. Am I thinking about that in the right way?
BigCommerce has a cool feature where if you get to the API, you can create one storefront and then just use the same database to create multiple storefronts. So the same structure of doing link building you can use in your e-commerce with BigCommerce very freaking easily. So they have a headless solution where you can use WordPress to run your BigCommerce stores, right? So you do your database in BigCommerce, you put up your WordPress main store for the broad market that you're marketing, and then pull down
the
database.
Overarching at the top, and then all these feeder sites as well that then can link back up to the overarching site. So that goes back to Mike and I's mini-net stuff. You've got one primary, like say pets. And then within pets, you've got cats, dogs, canaries, hamsters, whatever else you can keep in your house.
And you're only paying by your visits. So like the whole, say you have 300 freaking e-commerce stores, it's just based on the traffic you have. So if you're converting it, you're not spending too much, right? You're spending just what you need to spend to fucking deliver the products, right? And now, so you've got, let's say, we've got a site that sells like pies, and there's a category for apple pies, blueberry pies, raspberry pies. And then you've got a domain that's like apple pies are great.com, blueberry pies are awesome.com, bradlovespie.com. And
that he does.
So now if you're only getting a couple hits down on the freaking applepie.com, you're not paying a full fucking monthly fee for this because you're only paying for those couple hits. So that's also a way to structure, like really easily structure affiliate shit if you're doing e-commerce and you want affiliates. So you can do a program through that really easy. And so I would focus on the broadest thing you can at the top that makes sense. I always like to come in as tight as possible, but you don't want to miss out on anything, and then focus more, like niche down more and more as you're down in the tier. So it's
even
just
if
like
you took the pets example and you didn't want to go that broad, say you wanted to go dogs, you could do leashes, you could do muzzles, you could do food, you could do a bunch of those. So you've got subcategories under those as well. So it all depends on your case. But I mean, to answer the initial question, should you build an overarching site or should you build a micro niche one? Yes.
Yo,
Palmer, shout out from
What's up, buddy?
Marino. Good to see you. I think what things I've made mistakes with in the past has certainly been too niche specific, and not having that ability to scale. And I think if you get into any business, you have to have some room for scale. Whether you're selling content or selling dog leashes, you need the ability to hit your goal and then, you know, scale. So I would always bear that in mind. You know, everyone sets out in business to scale a business. So don't cut yourself too short, because I've done that a million times and it just sucks ass.
And from the lexiconical standpoint and the freaking entity standpoint that we're kind of on topic for, having a broader market that you can play with, you're going to be able to pull in support terms that make sense that aren't directly related to your conversion. So it's 100% correct. You're not just going to be writing about pages, keywords that convert for you, because you want to be there for the whole life cycle of the freaking buying process. You want to get them when they're in the informational seeking stage.
Especially
you want to get
you're pixeling them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that way you that's exactly, if you pixel them when they come in, and if you have the multiple sites, so when you do a network, you're thinking about this from that like little sheet that we talked about. And so you'll have informational sites on tier 2, you'll have commercial sites on tier 2, but you're pixeling that same pixel on every freaking website, right? So you can cookie them when they hit the site down here. That way, you know, if they come to your main site, they're like, oh, you came from blah, blah, blah. Here's a coupon for 10% off. We have a, you know, you don't have to say that it's your property, but you can have a little a deal with your own self where people that came from this place has a 10% off coupon. So when we talk about cloaking, when Brad mentions cloaking, we're not just talking about the SEO aspect of it. We're talking about, you know, they call it personalization in e-commerce. They call it different things in different places, but it all comes down to if you're tracking what the user is and what they're doing, and you're pixeling them, you're cookieing them, whatever you're doing, because a pixel is really just cookie. But now you can do creative campaigns. We've done Amazon campaigns in the past with Mass Page, where we're sucking traffic in and we're pixeling them with a pixel on just mass sites, and now we're pushing them back to Amazon. And not only are we pixeling them, so the process is, the visitor hits, you cookie them, you get them pixeled, and then you redirect them to a landing page where you can capture them and their offer, or in an offer, and then you can also push them from there through however you want to into the actual product on Amazon. So if you start to go through the process and you think about every step of the buying process, you want to be capturing and cookieing and just maintaining the relationship. SEO and tech is a way to keep that personal relationship going with people through the digital age. So I would recommend on that. I said last week, read the link building book by Eric Ward. There is a book about what did the
in a long time.
Oh God, what am I? It's a social networking book, and not a schema book, but damn it, I'm pulling a blank. I'll try to remember it and I'll mention it next week. But there's a really good book.
Comments, Mike.
Yeah, I will. There's a really good book that any book that talks about relationships and marketing, you should understand that. If you don't understand that, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense what Mike says, and we are about out of time. We've got a minute, but we have Olga here who will try and help. Finally, I'm building twin real estate websites with the same name on .ca and .com and want to link them together. Do you think Google will like it? Will be ranking one based on location, another on builders.
Are you duplicating them though? Like that's a kind of a loaded question, because if you're duplicating them, then it's really dependent on how you guys are doing it, Olga. So if you want to let us know how what your plan is for the sites, I can't really.
Yeah.
It can either go horrendously well for you if you do things right, or horrendously bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah.
So if you're asking, then definitely don't duplicate it and put it up and link it together. That's definitely not what you want to do, right?
No.
So I will say that there's networks that are still out there. You can get away if you're doing the content correctly with linking and cross-linking and everything, but don't do it if you're duplicating it completely. At least tokenize shit.
Yeah. But sadly, guys, we are out of time for this week. That has been another hour. Guys are loving the webinar. There's always great value listening to all of this stuff. It's just, I think, a great way to learn, not questions, just listening to guys that have done stuff is always a great webinar. And hopefully you've got some good value out of it this week. Who are we having on next week and what we're going to discuss next week, guys?
Next week, I think maybe I did talk to Angel. I talked to Clint. I'm interested in talking about some of the more of the on-page stuff next week. To be honest, I think people could use it. Some of the questions I'm seeing right now through Skype and other places, I think that getting more into some of that lexiconical stuff and how to maximize what you do right or how you do generate content. We can talk about content generation and things like that. So if I have an idea of who I want to ask, so I'll see if I can get someone on that's pretty sick when it comes to how they do their content. But yeah.
So that is the topic for next week, guys. But for this week, we are out of time. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Craig.
No worries at all. And we will see you all again next week. And have we got anything to give away this week? Are we still giving away that plugin?
Yeah, they can all go to
nfgsecret.com. And if you want, Mike and I have a monthly recurring one that we do, but we can give everyone 7 days free. nfgseo.com/7. If you want to go there and take a peek behind the curtain for a few days.
I would say take a peek up Brad's skirt, but
for a few days, yeah. There's a lot to see. So, yeah, you might need more than a week.
We don't know if he's got any Scottish heritage under there, though. If he's going to
find out
wear a pair of boxers or go commando, but that remains to be seen.
Depends on who I'm going on a date with. You know, I don't know.
I'm Welsh.
Be classy or trashy.
But thank you very much, guys. It has been a pleasure.
For the time.
Next week.
Later, everyone.
See ya.